so the next thing we're going to talk about is listing. Woohoo! So at this point, I'm going to bring up a picture of the chart that I use to list my items. Now, what I like to do is I have one chart on my computer where I have the brand, the item, the size, the measurements, the original price, and the list price. And that's just for me to list. So if you do want to use my system, feel free. So the first few things that you're going to want to keep track of for your listings are, first of all, the brand. So the brand is going to be something like J. Crew, Juicy Couture, Pink Victoria's Secret, whatever brand is on that tag. You just want to keep that on your chart. Every eBay listing, it has a brand spot. If your item doesn't have a brand and you can't find anything as far as branding goes, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Nobody's going to freak out because you don't have a brand. Now, the next thing that you want to keep track of is the item. So you want to describe it as much as you possibly can. eBay only gives you 80 characters though. So one thing you want to keep in mind is some abbreviations. So if you are listing something new with tags, just do NWT. If you're listing something vintage, you can do VTG. And if you are listing something new without tags, do NWOT. Try to get as many descriptive words into that title as you can. Make sure first priority that you include what the item is. For my example, I have a new with tags Osborne Family Lights 2015 That's a Wrap shirt from Hollywood Studios. So I made sure to include what it's for, the year, the phrase that's on it, and then that it's a shirt and it's from Hollywood Studios. And that's pretty much all I could fit. Now, if I had more characters, I would throw in that it's long sleeve, I would say that it's crew neck, basically any description I can possibly include. I would maybe add Disney to it and figure out what you think that the person is going to be searching for that's looking for this item. Now, the next thing you need to know is the size. Super easy. It's going to be on the tag. Now, in some cases, you're not going to be able to find the size because the tag is missing, it doesn't have a tag, or for some reason there's no size on it, or it's a weird number because it's from Europe. What I like to do is just do the measurements and sort of compare with what I know of past measurements and sort of estimate what the size is. And in that case, I'll say no size tag, but measures like a medium, check measurements. And that brings me to the next thing you should include, which is the measurements. Yay! I like to do as many measurements as makes sense. So I'll usually only do about 3 unless it's like a jumpsuit or something that has a lot of weird measurements, and if it didn't fit them in a certain spot, it wouldn't fit at all. But try to keep it simple and make it as easy for yourself as possible later on so you don't have to be taking more measurements, like go get the item, pull it out, measure it. So the last 2 things you need to know just for listing are the original price of the item and the list price. And you really don't need to know the original price, to be honest. When I originally got started, I liked to look it up just to make sure I wasn't being unreasonable with my pricing. But generally, as long as you're looking up prices correctly, you're never going to mess it up. So the list price is one of the more difficult things to figure out. So I'm going to do an entire video on those. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the last thing that you need for your listings, which is photos. Woohoo! So I'm going to show you our photo setup that we use for taking pictures. I want to say it's fancy, but it's pretty much what everybody uses that does this professionally. Here we go. So you will notice there are 3 kind of professional photography lights that are from Amazon. Probably dropshipped. No, 100% they are dropshipped, but they do the trick for what we need them for. And then we have basically a drafting table that we've put a backdrop that came with the lights over. We've actually extended it a little bit by adding boxes, but it's cool because we can actually angle it. So if you can find something like this, it's really easy. There we go. So at the top, we have a command hook and then we have a hanger on there. Originally, we were having them lay completely flat, but it was a lot harder to take the pictures that way because we had to basically reach over it and have an exact down picture. So it's a lot easier this way because we can just sort of angle it from here and get a picture like that. But of course it would fall off if we just had them laying like that, so that's why we have the command hook and the hanger. It also, with a backdrop like this, if it's flat, it kind of looks like we're laying out clothes on our porch outside, which we don't want people to think that we're just laying clothes on a wooden floor. But obviously the hanger kind of makes it look a little bit more like it's either hanging on a wall or it's hanging on what it's hanging on, which is a backdrop. The most important thing in the photos in my opinion, is making sure that you get all of the issues. So pilling, holes, stains, stuff like that. Make sure you get that in the photos, because if you don't, you will 100% get a return or a bad review, and that is the last thing you want after all your work. So I'm gonna do a quick example for you of what I would do for taking pictures of an item. All right, so what I'm going to be doing for this example listing is a Theory cashmere sweater, super nice, found it at the Goodwill outlets, and it's actually in the color block style, which basically means there's just blocks of color. Pretty self-explanatory. But if you do find anything like that, make sure you say it's color block in the listing. People do actually search for that. The lights really make any stains or imperfections show up, so I'm gonna take a look at the sleeves. Looks good. Let's look at the back. That looks good. Wait a second. Aha! So there we go. There's one small stain on the sleeve. And it may not seem like a big deal, but believe me, whoever buys this, it's gonna be a really big deal to them. So just to cover all your bases, you're gonna make sure that you get a picture of that stain. I also like to include it in the description, in the title, just in case they're like, oh, I didn't read the description, I didn't see that, now I wanna return it. Just save yourself some time and stress and list everything beforehand. So what I like to do is what I just did. I fold over the sleeves so it doesn't take up the entire table and I can get a nice square shot. So I'll do that. Click. And then what I'll do is I'll get a close-up of each sleeve. Sometimes I'll get one down here with the sleeves. In this case, the stain doesn't show right now, so I'm gonna flip it over, fold over the sleeves, and then we're gonna get one main picture. Then we're gonna get the sleeves, maybe the bottom, and then we're gonna go ahead and get a close-up shot on that stain. So that's pretty much what I do. Now that I've taken all the pictures, we're gonna go ahead and do some measurements. So for pit to pit, you're gonna measure from one pit to the other pit. It's about 19 inches, if you can see that. 19 inches. So I usually just kind of memorize it in my brain as I go. And then we're gonna measure from the collar to the bottom. It's 24 inches, so we got 19, 24, and then shoulder to the edge, 26. So 19, 24, 26 are the measurements that I'm gonna remember. I usually don't even write down what they are, but as you're getting started, definitely write down which is, because otherwise you'll have to go back and do it again. And the ultimate goal is to never have to do any of these tasks twice.